"Get that girl out of my community pool right now!" The shout cracked across the quiet backyard like a branch breaking in winter. Nathan Cole turned from the stack of unopened moving boxes beside the patio door and looked toward the cedar gate. A white woman in a spotless cream blazer stood on the other side, one hand wrapped around the iron latch and the other raised like she was directing traffic. Her blonde hair was sprayed into a shape that did not move in the afternoon breeze. Oversized sunglasses covered half her face, but they did nothing to hide the anger tightening her mouth. In the pool, Nathan's 15-year-old daughter Sophie stopped midway through a slow lap. Water glistened on her pale shoulders. For the first time in months, she had looked peaceful. Now she looked frightened. Nathan stepped between the stranger and the pool. "Excuse me," he said. The woman pointed past him. "I said she needs to get out, immediately. No one is allowed to use a residential pool during the first 72 hours after moving into Blue Heron Estates." Nathan glanced at Sophie, then back at the woman. "And you are?" Her chin lifted. "Denise Whitmore, president of the Blue Heron Homeowners Association. 8 years running." She said the title the way a judge might announce a sentence. Nathan had met people like her before. Not exactly like her, because Denise Whitmore seemed to belong to a category all her own, but close enough. During 22 years as a municipal risk assessor, he had sat across tables from contractors who believed confidence could replace evidence, administrators who mistook procedure for power, and committee chairs who thought a laminated badge made them untouchable. He had learned that the loudest person in a disagreement usually hoped no one would ask to see the paperwork. He rested one hand on the warm cedar gate. "This is a private pool," he said. Denise let out a short laugh. "You may own the structure, Mr. Cole, but exterior recreational features remain subject to community oversight. You know my name, I know every homeowner's name." Nathan did not like the pride in that answer. Behind him, Sophie climbed the pool steps and wrapped herself in a navy towel. Her dark blonde hair clung to her cheeks. She was a white girl with her mother's gray-blue eyes, and since losing her mother 18 months earlier, those eyes had carried a tiredness no teenager should have known. The move to Blue Heron Estates had been Nathan's attempt to give them both room to breathe. The house at the end of Willow Crest Lane was smaller than their old place but warmer, with broad windows, a stone fireplace, and a backyard shielded by tall hedges. The pool had been the reason Sophie said yes. She had been a competitive swimmer before Laura became ill. After the funeral, she had refused to enter a pool. Nathan never pushed. Then, during their first afternoon in the new house, Sophie had stood at the water's edge for 10 minutes, taken one careful breath, and stepped in. 20 minutes later, Denise Whitmore arrived to take even that away. Denise reached into a leather folder and pulled out a sheet of paper. "This is your first courtesy warning. Subsequent violations begin at $150. Nathan accepted the paper but did not read it yet. "What is the purpose of the 72-hour rule?" "To preserve visual stability during occupancy transitions." He waited. Denise waited too, as though the phrase explained itself. "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means moving creates disorder. Trucks, boxes, unfamiliar vehicles, workers coming and going. The board decided that visible recreational activity during that period may create an impression of carelessness. My daughter swimming creates an impression of carelessness. You are new here, Mr. Cole. I suggest you resist the urge to challenge standards you do not yet understand." Nathan looked down at the paper. At the top, in blue ink, were the words residential settling and visual harmony norder. Below that sat a paragraph full of vague language about neighborhood expectations. There was no article number, no date of adoption, no signature other than Denise's own. He folded it once. "Thank you for introducing yourself," he said. Denise frowned. "Is that all you have to say? For now, you need to acknowledge the violation. I just accepted the paper. That is not the same as acknowledging it." Nathan opened the gate just wide enough to stand in the gap. Denise took a half step forward, assuming she had been invited in. Nathan did not move aside. "I'll review the governing documents tonight," he said. "Until then, you are not entering my property." Denise's face hardened. "The HOA has inspection authority." "Then send me the section that grants it, along with proper notice." "I am the proper notice." "No," Nathan said calmly. "You are a person standing outside my gate." For a moment, the only sound was water dripping from Sophie's towel onto the stone patio. Denise leaned closer. "People who cooperate do very well in this community." Nathan met her stare. "That sounds less like advice than you probably intended." He closed the gate. Denise remained on the other side for nearly a minute. Then her shoes struck the walkway in sharp, angry steps until the sound disappeared around the house. Sophie looked at her father. "Did we do something wrong?" Nathan unfolded the warning again, read it more carefully, and felt the first faint spark of suspicion. "No," he said, "but I think Mrs. Whitmore is counting on us believing we did." That evening, while Sophie unpacked upstairs, Nathan opened the HOA binder supplied at closing and read every recorded rule twice. The covenants covered fences, paint, landscaping, noise, parking, and the maintenance of common property. They said nothing about a 72-hour waiting period, visual stability, presidential clarifications, or unrestricted access to private backyards. He emailed Denise asking for the rule's article number, adoption date, meeting minutes, and filing information. 7 minutes later, she replied that Blue Heron standards were living standards that could be clarified by the president when necessary. She advised him to focus less on loopholes and more on becoming a responsible neighbor. The next morning, a yellow envelope appeared beneath his doormat. Inside was a pool compliance assessment listing 12 alleged violations. The water was the wrong shade of blue. A red foam noodle was a disruptive color. The chairs faced an unapproved angle. The water level was 3/4 of an inch too high. Even Sophie's navy towel was criticized because its white lettering created excessive contrast. The total fine was $450. Sophie read the notice at the kitchen island. "Mom bought that noodle." "I know." She said red made everything look faster. Nathan remembered Laura laughing when she said it. "We are not throwing it away because a stranger invented a rule." He requested the association's enforcement policy, appeal procedure, account ledger, and every resolution governing private pools. He also stated in writing that no HOA representative had permission to enter his fenced yard without consent, lawful notice, or a genuine emergency. Denise answered with a photograph taken over his fence. A red circle surrounded the foam noodle. Continued defiance will increase penalties. Nathan created a folder labeled Blue Heron and saved everything. Over the next 10 days, Blue Heron Estates revealed itself in layers. Most of the neighborhood was pleasant. White ranch style and colonial homes curved along tree-lined streets. Retired couples walked small dogs in the morning. Children rode bicycles after school. Neighbors waved, sometimes cautiously, as if they were not sure whether friendliness required board approval. Across the street lived Eleanor Price, a white woman in her early 70s with silver hair, clear green eyes, and a habit of watering the same row of roses whenever Denise passed by. Eleanor brought Nathan a lemon cake on his 3rd day in the house. "I saw Denise welcome you," she said dryly. "If that was a welcome, I'd hate to see a complaint." Eleanor smiled but glanced toward the street before answering. "Around here, they are often the same thing." She told him Denise had become president after campaigning on order, property values, and neighborly responsibility. At first, her rules had been ordinary. Over time, they had become personal. She issued warnings for bird feeders, basketball hoops, holiday decorations, porch furniture, and vehicles left in driveways after 10 at night. She measured lawns. She photographed garbage cans. She once fined a widower because his porch light was a warmer shade than the approved bulbs. "Why do people tolerate it?" Nathan asked. "Because challenging her takes time," Eleanor said, "and because she makes examples of people." "What kind of examples?" "She floods them with notices. She adds legal fees. She tells the neighborhood they are selfish. Most people decide peace is cheaper." Nathan looked across at the Whitmore house, a large white colonial near the corner. Denise's husband, Mark, was pulling weeds beside the driveway. He was a white man around 60 with thinning brown hair and a posture that suggested he had spent years trying not to be noticed. Eleanor lowered her voice. "The community pool has been closed for almost a month. Filtration system, they say. Denise keeps promising repairs." Nathan remembered the financial disclosures provided at closing. "There's a reserve fund. There is supposed to be." Something in Eleanor's tone made him look at her. She changed the subject. "Sophie seems like a lovely girl." "She is. I'm glad she's swimming." "So am I." Eleanor nodded slowly. "Then don't let Denise turn that pool into another place your daughter feels she has to ask permission to breathe." Nathan did not intend to. 3 days later, Denise returned with 2 members of the compliance committee, a measuring pole, and a notice claiming they were there for a monthly pool inspection. The paper said it had been posted the previous day, although Nathan's camera showed no visitor until Denise's SUV arrived that morning. He asked which recorded covenant authorized entry into a privately owned, fenced backyard. "The board's general maintenance authority," Denise said. "Article number? You have already been warned about obstructive behavior." One committee member, a nervous white man named Calvin, looked down at his clipboard. Nathan asked whether he had personally read the governing documents. Calvin looked toward Denise instead of answering. "That tells me enough," Nathan said. Denise insisted they needed to test the water, measure furniture spacing, and verify safety equipment. Nathan refused entry and asked her to send the relevant recorded language. She accused him of creating a hostile relationship with the board. "I asked for documentation," he said. "You brought a pole." By afternoon, the neighborhood message board announced that the Cole property had been placed under enhanced compliance monitoring. Residents were warned not to accept invitations to use the pool because its safety status was unverified, even though Nathan had invited no one. A second post said the board was exploring temporary community access to alternative aquatic facilities while the common pool remained closed. Nathan checked the county records, association registration, and archived covenants again. Nothing granted the authority, Denise claimed. Her method was becoming clear. Print a demand on blue letterhead, attach a fine, repeat it confidently, and wait for people to mistake persistence for law. He sent a certified dispute demanding a formal hearing, withdrawal of unsupported fines, and preservation of every communication concerning his property. He included copies of his previous emails and demanded that all enforcement activity pause until the association produced the legal basis for its claims. The hearing was scheduled for Thursday at 6:30 in the clubhouse. When Nathan arrived, Denise sat at the center of a long folding table beneath a framed photograph of the Blue Heron Fountain. 4 board members sat beside her. All were white, all between 50 and 70, and all looked as though they would rather be somewhere else. Calvin sat near the wall with his clipboard. About 20 residents had come to watch. Eleanor occupied a chair in the front row. Denise called the meeting to order, then immediately announced that Nathan had accumulated $900 in fines, plus a $75 administrative review fee. Nathan placed his binder on the table. Before we discuss amounts, I'd like the board to identify the recorded provisions I violated. Denise opened a folder. The board is not required to educate homeowners on every application of policy. I'm not asking for education, I'm asking for the rule. Board member Howard Pell, a white retired dentist with heavy glasses, cleared his throat. Denise, perhaps we should provide the section. We have already done so, she said. No, Nathan replied. You gave me documents you created and signed yourself. None cite the covenants. A murmur moved through the audience. Denise tapped her pen. The president may issue interpretive guidance when existing standards require clarification. Where is that authority granted? Under the board's broad mandate. Where is the broad mandate? She stared at him. You enjoy wasting people's time. Nathan opened his binder. Article 6, Section 4 gives the board authority to maintain common property. Article 7 allows it to enforce recorded architectural standards. Article 9 establishes due process for violations. Nothing here permits the president to create new restrictions without a board vote, homeowner notice, and proper recording. Howard leaned toward the copy in front of him. Another board member, Linda Carver, adjusted her reading glasses. He's correct about the recording requirement. Denise turned to her. This is not a new restriction, it is an interpretation. Nathan slid the pool compliance assessment across the table. An interpretation that dictates towel colors, furniture angles, water temperature, toy colors, swimming hours, and water level to the quarter inch. Someone in the audience laughed softly. Denise's voice sharpened. A community loses value one exception at a time. Nathan looked at the residents. A community also loses value when its leaders invent rules. The room became still, he continued. I am asking for 3 things. Withdraw the unsupported fines, stop photographing my fenced backyard, and confirm in writing that no HOA representative may enter my property without lawful authority. Denise folded her arms, denied. Howard looked surprised. We haven't voted. The president is empowered to manage hearings. Managing isn't deciding, Linda said. For the first time, Nathan saw a crack in Denise's control. It was small, but it was there. Denise sensed it too. She straightened the papers in front of her. Very well, all those in favor of upholding the fines. She raised her hand immediately. Howard hesitated, then kept his hand down. Linda did the same. A third member, Richard Sloan, stared at the table. Only Denise and board treasurer Pamela Knox voted to uphold the fines. 2 in favor, 3 opposed. The fines failed. For one brief second, Denise's face emptied of expression. Then she announced that the vote concerned only the present notices and did not limit future enforcement. Nathan closed his binder. I'll expect written confirmation. As people stood to leave, Eleanor touched his arm. No one has beaten her in a hearing for years. I didn't beat her. I asked them to read. For Denise, that may be the same thing. Near the door, Nathan heard Denise speaking in a low, furious voice to Pamela. He won't be so confident when the emergency provision takes effect. Nathan kept walking, but the phrase stayed with him. The next morning, every household in Blue Heron Estates received an email titled Recreational Emergency Declaration. The community pool's filtration system, Denise wrote, had suffered an unexpected failure. Repair delays had created a severe hardship for residents, especially children and older adults. Under the newly activated Emergency Recreation Relief provision, the association would temporarily designate qualifying private pools as supplemental community facilities. Only one address appeared on the designation list, Nathan's. The schedule began the following Monday. Children under 12, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., senior residents, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., board members and invited guests, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., the Cole family, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m., The document also stated that Nathan would be responsible for pool maintenance, water quality, towels, first aid supplies, and liability for all users. Sophie read the email over his shoulder. They're giving us 1 hour in our own pool? That appears to be the proposal. Can they actually do this? No, she looked at him. You said that pretty fast because some questions are easy. But Denise had attached a document bearing the signatures of 3 board members and stamped with the association seal. It looked official enough to frighten anyone unfamiliar with the records. Nathan examined the signatures: Denise Whitmore, Pamela Knox, Gerald Ames. He knew Denise and Pamela. He did not know Gerald, Eleanor did. When Nathan showed her the document that afternoon, the color left her face. Gerald Ames? She said. Yes, he was board secretary before Linda. When did he step down? Last year. Nathan watched her carefully. Why? Eleanor swallowed. He died. The room fell silent. He died 8 months ago, she continued. Heart trouble. The whole neighborhood attended the memorial. Nathan looked back at the fresh blue signature on the page. Denise had not merely stretched a rule. She had created one, attached the name of a deceased man, and used it to claim control over his home. That changed the nature of the problem. Nathan spent the rest of that day building a timeline. He printed every warning, email, photograph, and fine. He downloaded the original metadata from the documents Denise had sent, noting when each file was created and modified. He obtained a certified copy of the recorded covenants from the county clerk and placed it beside Denise's so-called emergency recreation relief provision. The provision had no article number, no adoption date, no record of a meeting, no notice period, no county filing stamp. Its digital file had been created 11 days earlier on a computer registered to Denise Whitmore. Nathan also searched the archived newsletters available on the association website. Gerald Ames had appeared in photographs from prior years, a tall white man with a red beard and a broad signature that swept upward at the end. The signature on Denise's emergency document was narrow, careful, and nearly identical in pressure and angle to her own. He did not accuse her publicly. Not yet. Instead, he emailed the entire board. Please provide the minutes, voting record, legal review, and recording information for the emergency recreation relief provision. Please also confirm the date and method by which each listed signatory approved it. Howard replied first. I have never seen this provision and did not vote on it. Linda replied 2 minutes later. Neither did I. Richard's response came that evening. I was told this was an administrative temporary measure that did not require a vote. I did not sign it. Pamela did not respond. Denise sent a message to the full board 20 minutes later. All questions concerning emergency action must be directed to the president. Individual board members are not authorized to offer interpretations that may undermine association operations. Nathan saved that message as well. At 8:05 the following Monday morning, he stood in his kitchen making coffee when a metallic scrape came from the backyard gate. He put down the mug. Another scrape followed, then the click of a lock turning. Nathan crossed the family room and opened the patio door. Denise stepped into the yard holding a brass key. Behind her came Pamela Knox, 6 white residents, and 2 young white boys carrying inflatable rings. One of the boys wore swim goggles on his forehead. The adults looked uncomfortable. Denise looked triumphant. A plastic sign had been zip-tied to the outside of the gate. Blue and temporary immunity pool off for his access. Only Sophie was already in the water. Monday mornings had become part of her routine before summer tutoring. She stopped near the shallow end and stared at the strangers entering the yard. Denise pointed toward her. This session is reserved for children under 12. She needs to exit the facility. Sophie's face went pale. Dad? Nathan walked to the gate, removed the key from Denise's hand, and held it up. Where did you get this? Denise gave him a look of practiced patience. The association maintains emergency access keys for every property. No, it doesn't. This key was transferred from the former owner. Nathan remembered the closing documents. The former owner had disclosed that a spare gate key was once provided to a neighborhood pet sitter. The lock should have been changed before move-in, but the locksmith appointment had been delayed. Denise had acquired that key somehow and kept it. Pamela shifted behind her. Denise said you agreed to the schedule. Nathan looked at her. She lied. Denise's lips tightened. Do not use that word in front of children. Then stop giving me reasons to use it. The 2 boys' mother, a white woman named Rachel Monroe, lowered the swim bag from her shoulder. Mr. Cole, I'm sorry. The email said the board had arranged this. You have nothing to apologize for, Nathan said. You were given false information. Denise stepped toward the pool. The session has already begun. We will discuss your attitude later. Nathan moved into her path. His voice remained level. Everyone needs to leave my property. The HOA has activated emergency access. There is no emergency. There is no valid provision, and you entered through a locked gate with a key you had no right to use. She raised her voice. I am the president of this association. Nathan took his phone from his pocket and began recording. Please say that again. Denise glanced at the screen. You do not have permission to record me. You are in my backyard. This is a designated community facility. Is that your official position? Denise looked directly into the camera. My official position is that all recreational amenities within Blue Heron Estates fall under HOA authority during a declared emergency. As president, I have the right to enter, manage access, remove unauthorized users, and enforce the schedule. Nathan held the phone steady. And you are ordering my daughter out of her family's private pool. She is violating the assigned time. Sophie stood in chest-deep water, hugging her arms around herself. Something cold moved through Nathan then, not rage but clarity. Denise had crossed from harassment into intrusion, and she had chosen to do it in front of witnesses, while declaring her authority on camera. He turned to the others. I am not blaming any of you, but this is private property, and I am asking you to leave. Rachel immediately took her sons by the hands. Come on, boys. The other residents followed. One older man muttered an apology. Within a minute, only Denise and Pamela remained. Pamela looked toward the open gate. Maybe we should go. Denise ignored her. Every minute your daughter remains in the pool during a restricted session will result in an additional $100 fine. Nathan glanced at Sophie. Keep swimming if you want to. Sophie hesitated. Then she pushed away from the pool wall and began another lap. Denise opened her mouth. Nathan raised one hand. You have been told to leave. If you remain, I will contact the proper authorities and provide the recording. This is intimidation. No, this is a boundary. Pamela left first. Denise stayed another 10 seconds, staring at Nathan as if trying to make him blink. Then she walked through the gate. Nathan removed the temporary sign, closed the gate, and called a locksmith. By noon, every exterior lock had been changed. By 1, he had installed 2 additional cameras covering the backyard entrances. By 3, he had sent a formal notice to the board, the association's management company, and its insurance carrier, documenting unauthorized entry and demanding preservation of all communications related to his property. He did not file a lawsuit. He did not threaten one. Nathan knew that broad threats often made people defensive. Specific facts made them nervous. The insurance carrier replied the next morning. Please clarify whether the association is operating or intends to operate a community swimming facility on a privately owned residential parcel. Nathan forwarded the question to Denise and copied the board. Denise responded, the temporary program is an internal amenity management matter and does not alter the residential nature of the property. The insurer answered, charging fees, assigning public access times, directing non-residents to a private parcel, or representing the parcel as an association facility may create uninsured exposure. Please provide all related documents immediately. For the first time, Denise did not reply within minutes. That evening, she appeared at Nathan's front door alone. He spoke through the video doorbell. What can I do for you? We need to discuss the confusion created by your email. There is no confusion. You contacted the insurance company without board authorization. They contacted me after receiving the notice I sent to the management company. You are interfering with association business. You designated my backyard as association business. Denise glanced toward the street, lowering her voice. Open the door, Mr. Cole. No. Her expression flickered. She was accustomed to people opening doors, stepping aside, and allowing her tone to set the terms. This can still be resolved cooperatively, she said. Good. Withdraw the designation, confirm you have no access rights, return every key or copy in your possession, remove all fines, and issue a correction to the neighborhood. That is not cooperation. That is surrender. Those are the facts. She leaned closer to the camera. You do not understand how isolated you can become in a place like this. Nathan paused. Is that another threat? It is an observation. So is the fact that this conversation is being recorded. Denise looked at the camera lens, stepped back, and left without another word. 2 days later, a glossy flyer appeared in every mailbox. Grand opening Blue Heron Summer Aquatic Center, hosted by HOA President Denise Whitmore. Saturday, 10:40 a.m. Family admission, 40 POV, $40 refreshments, music, games, and community celebration. A photograph of Nathan's pool filled the background. The image had been taken from above the fence. Beneath it, in smaller letters, was a line that made him read the flyer twice. Special thanks to Nathan Cole, honorary community sponsor. Sophie stood beside him at the kitchen counter. She's selling tickets to our house. Yes, can she be any more ridiculous? Nathan turned the flyer over. A payment link directed residents to an account called Blue Heron Events. She can, he said, and I think she just was. By that evening, the neighborhood message board filled with comments. Some residents were excited. Others asked whether Nathan had agreed. Denise replied that extensive negotiations had produced a positive community solution. She thanked Nathan for finally embracing shared values. Nathan posted one sentence beneath her announcement. I have not agreed to public access, ticket sales, or HOA operation of my private pool. The post disappeared within 2 minutes. His account was then suspended for spreading disruptive misinformation. Eleanor came over carrying the flyer in a cardboard file box. "I think it is time," she said. Nathan led her inside. They sat at the dining table while Sophie worked upstairs. Eleanor placed the box between them but kept both hands on the lid. "I was treasurer for 5 years," she began, "before Pamela. I remember." At first, Denise and I worked well together. She was demanding, but she paid attention. Then she started treating the reserve funds like private tools. A little transfer here, a delayed invoice there. She always had an explanation. Eleanor opened the box. Inside were bank statements, invoices, meeting notes, vendor proposals, and printed emails. She separated them into neat stacks. "3 years ago, the pool consultant warned us that the filtration system needed replacement," she said. "The board approved a special assessment. Every household paid $800. That is $67,200, Nathan said, plus money already in reserves. We had almost $90,000 set aside for the project. What happened? Denise postponed the work. She said material prices were too high. Then she moved part of the money into an account marked Community Enhancement. Eleanor showed him invoices for executive office furniture, catered board dinners, a decorative stone entrance feature, and landscaping services from Whitmore Outdoor Design. "Related to Mark?" Nathan asked. "Denise's younger brother, Curtis. One invoice charged $11,000 for seasonal flower rotation. Another billed the association for irrigation repairs on common land, but the listed address belonged to Denise." Eleanor's voice trembled. "I challenged her. She told me I had misunderstood the account codes. A week later, anonymous complaints were filed against my garden, my fence, and the color of my shutters. Then she called a meeting and said I was becoming confused with age." Nathan looked up sharply. "She embarrassed me in front of everyone," Eleanor continued. "I resigned. Pamela took over. I kept copies because I knew something was wrong, but I was ashamed that I let her silence me." "You did not let her," Nathan said. "She used her position to punish you. I still stayed quiet. You are not quiet now." Eleanor looked toward the file box. The community pool did not fail unexpectedly. It failed because Denise spent the repair money elsewhere. "Your pool is not just convenient, it is camouflage. If she can point to a temporary facility, she can delay questions until the annual meeting." Nathan considered the flyer again. Denise was charging admission to his property, using an account she controlled, and publicly describing the event as an HOA program. She believed scale would turn trespass into legitimacy. If 60 people showed up, she expected Nathan to surrender rather than disappoint them. That was the method behind almost everything she did. She recruited innocent people as pressure. She turned neighbors into an audience, then dared her target to look unreasonable in front of them. Nathan closed the box. "What would happen if she had to take full responsibility for everything she is claiming?" he asked. Eleanor studied him. "Pool, she says the HOA is operating a community pool. She says it controls access. She is selling tickets. She is advertising food, music, games, and invited guests." "Yes, then she should be prepared to meet every requirement that comes with operating a community pool." A slow understanding appeared in Eleanor's eyes. Nathan continued. "Insurance, health inspection, occupancy, emergency planning, accessibility, taxes, accounting, lifeguard credentials, sanitation, vendor permits." Eleanor almost smiled. "She has none of those." "No," Nathan said, "but I need her to confirm in writing that she accepts responsibility for them." The next morning, Nathan sent Denise a document titled Temporary Aquatic Facility Operating Agreement. It was only 3 pages long. He had written it in plain English, with no hidden language and no legal tricks. It stated that Nathan did not surrender ownership of the pool or grant permanent access. If the HOA insisted on holding its advertised event, the association would identify itself as the sole organizer and operator. It would accept responsibility for permits, insurance, guest supervision, water testing, safety staffing, sanitation, accessibility, vendors, ticket revenue, refunds, and any claims arising from the event. The agreement also required the organizer to confirm that it possessed lawful authority to conduct the program. At the bottom were signature lines for the HOA president and treasurer. Nathan expected questions. He received a signed copy 43 minutes later. Denise had added a note in blue ink beside her signature. "Owner acknowledges HOA authority and agrees not to interfere." Pamela's signature appeared beneath hers. Nathan read the document twice. Then he scanned it, saved copies in 3 locations, and sent one to the full board with a brief message. For transparency, attached is the agreement signed by President Whitmore and Treasurer Knox concerning Saturday's advertised event. Howard called him within 5 minutes. "What is this?" he asked. "It is exactly what it says. Did the board approve operating a public pool at your house? I have no record of such approval. Neither do I. Then you may want to ask your president why she signed on the association's behalf." Howard lowered his voice. "Nathan, are you planning to let this event happen?" I am not opening my pool to the public. Then why send the agreement? Because Denise has told the neighborhood, the board, and the insurer that the HOA is the operator. She has now accepted in writing every responsibility attached to that claim. What happens next depends on whether those claims are true. Howard was silent for several seconds. I think you should know, he said finally. Denise told us the former owner had signed a permanent recreational easement. Did she show it to you? No, she said the county was processing the certified copy. There is no easement in the title records. I was afraid of that. Nathan thanked him and ended the call. He then began making notifications. He contacted the county health department and provided the flyer, ticket link, schedule, and signed operating agreement. He asked whether a privately owned residential pool could be used as a ticketed community facility without inspection. He contacted the fire marshal's office and asked about occupancy, emergency access, and event planning for 60 or more guests in a fenced backyard with one primary gate. He contacted the city's licensing office about food vendors and temporary entertainment. He sent the insurer the signed agreement Denise had executed. He forwarded the Blue Heron Events payment link to the association management company and asked whether the account belonged to the HOA. He also sent the forged emergency provision, including Gerald Ames's supposed signature, to the association's attorney with a request for written verification. He did not demand action. He asked questions and supplied documents. By Wednesday afternoon, answers began arriving. The health department had no permit application for the location and no record of the pool as a public or semi-public facility. The fire marshal had received no event plan. The city had issued no temporary food service approvals. The insurance carrier stated that its general liability policy did not cover an unapproved ticketed aquatic event on a private residential parcel. The management company confirmed that Blue Heron Events was not an authorized association account. The association attorney's response was the shortest. The attached emergency recreation relief provision was not prepared, reviewed, or approved by this office. We have no record of its adoption. Immediate suspension of all activity under this document is advised. Nathan forwarded every answer to the board. Denise replied only once. Mr. Cole is attempting to sabotage a charitable neighborhood celebration through bureaucratic harassment. The event will proceed. The word charitable interested Nathan. The flyer did not identify a charity, and no message explained where the money would go. By Thursday evening, more than 50 tickets had been sold. Sophie watched her father at the dining table, surrounded by papers. "Are you nervous?" she asked. Yes, she seemed surprised. "You don't look nervous. Nervous and uncertain are not the same thing. What are you uncertain about?" How many people will show up believing they were invited? Whether Denise will try to force the gate? Whether someone will get frightened or angry? Can't we just leave for the day? We could. Why aren't we? Nathan leaned back. Because leaving would allow her to tell everyone I approved the event and then abandon them. More importantly, this is our home. We should not have to run from it. Sophie looked toward the dark windows overlooking the pool. I hate that she made it feel like it isn't ours. Nathan felt the truth of those words. Denise had not taken the pool, but she had occupied space in their minds. Sophie checked the gate before swimming. She lowered her voice when neighbors passed. She no longer left the red foam noodle beside the pool, not because she accepted the rule, but because she feared another photograph. That ends Saturday, he said. How do you know? Because power like hers depends on privacy. She tells one person one thing and someone else another. On Saturday, everyone will hear the same facts at the same time. Sophie sat quietly, then said, Mom would have liked that. What part? The facts. Nathan smiled. Laura had been a high school history teacher. She had believed evidence was not cold or lifeless, as some people claimed. Evidence was memory protected from manipulation. She would have brought color-coded folders, he said. Sophie smiled back. And sticky notes. Too many sticky notes. For the first time since Denise appeared at the gate, the house felt like theirs again. On Friday morning, Denise hired a crew to decorate the entrance to Willow Crest Lane. Blue and white balloons were tied to temporary signs directing traffic toward Nathan's address. A delivery van dropped off folding tables at the clubhouse. A local trio announced online that it would perform at the Blue Heron Summer Aquatic Center. Nathan did not interfere with activity on common property. He did, however, place 2 signs on his own front lawn. Private residence, no public pool access, and beneath it, no event has been off-wars by the property order. Denise arrived within 15 minutes. You need to remove those, she said from the sidewalk. No, they create confusion. They correct confusion. You signed an agreement. The agreement says the HOA accepts responsibility if it insists on acting as operator. It does not say I opened the pool. Her face changed as she finally understood the distinction she had ignored. You deliberately misled me. The first paragraph says no public access is granted. You knew I was busy. I expected you to read a document before signing it. Denise looked toward the signs. 57 families have paid, then refund them. The funds are committed. To what? Vendors, entertainment, supplies. From an account that does not belong to the association? Her eyes narrowed. You have been digging where you do not belong. You brought the digging to my backyard. She stepped off the sidewalk onto his lawn. Take down the signs, open the gate tomorrow, and stop contacting outside agencies. In return, I may persuade the board to forgive your remaining violations. There are no remaining violations. There can always be violations. Nathan let the statement hang between them. Then he said, "Thank you for making that clear." He glanced toward the camera mounted above the garage. Denise followed his eyes, her mouth tightened. Without another word, she walked back to her SUV. Saturday arrived under a bright blue sky. By 8:30, cars were already slowing near Willow Crest Lane. A breakfast vendor set up a cart on the common sidewalk. The musicians unloaded speakers near the entrance to Nathan's driveway. Children wearing swimsuits carried towels and bright inflatable animals. Older residents brought folding chairs. Several guests from outside the neighborhood arrived holding printed tickets. Nathan wore a plain blue shirt and khaki pants. Sophie stood beside him on the front porch in jeans and a white blouse. Eleanor joined them at 9:15 carrying the cardboard file box. You do not have to do this, Nathan told her. Yes, Eleanor said, I do. Across the street, Mark Whitmore stood beside his mailbox. He wore a gray polo shirt and looked toward his own house, where Denise was directing two volunteers carrying a ceremonial ribbon. At 9:45, Pamela arrived with a cash box. She avoided Nathan's eyes. At 9:50, Howard, Linda, and Richard took positions near the sidewalk, looking confused and uneasy. At 10, Denise walked into the center of the driveway wearing a bright white dress and carrying a pair of oversized gold scissors. Applause rose from several residents. A blue ribbon had been stretched between two posts at the edge of Nathan's property. Behind Denise stood a large banner. Grand opening, Blue Heron, Pool. Nathan's private residence sign stood 10 feet away. Denise lifted a microphone. Good morning, Blue Heron. Her amplified voice rolled down the street. Today is a celebration of what can happen when a community refuses to let one person's resistance stand in the way of shared happiness. Several people shifted uncomfortably. Denise continued. When our beloved neighborhood pool experienced an unfortunate mechanical problem, your board acted quickly. We identified an underused aquatic resource and worked through difficult negotiations to make it available to all of you. Sophie whispered, underused. Nathan said nothing. Denise gestured toward the house. Mr. Cole initially struggled to understand the obligations of community living, but with firm leadership and patience, even the most reluctant resident can learn that property ownership does not mean isolation. Nathan heard Eleanor inhale sharply beside him. Denise smiled at the crowd. This facility now represents unity over selfishness, cooperation over conflict, and the principle that no private preference should deprive a neighborhood of what it deserves. She raised the scissors. Before she could cut the ribbon, 3 official vehicles turned onto Willow Crest Lane. The first bore the county health department seal. The second belonged to the fire marshal's office. The third was a city code enforcement vehicle. Conversation stopped. A white woman in a Navy County jacket stepped from the first car carrying a tablet. A white man in a fire department uniform exited the second. 2 city officials followed. Denise lowered the scissors. The health inspector approached her. Who is the operator responsible for this event? Denise pointed toward Nathan without hesitation. The homeowner. Nathan stepped down from the porch holding a folder. The advertised operator is the Blue Heron Estates HOA. Mrs. Whitmore signed this agreement accepting operational responsibility. He handed over the document. The inspector read the signature page. Mrs. Whitmore, is this your signature? Denise glanced at the crowd. The agreement was obtained under misleading circumstances. Is it your signature? Yes, but and are you collecting admission fees? This is a community contribution. Pamela stood 10 feet away holding the cash box. The inspector looked toward the banner, the ticket table, the food cart, and the children in swimsuits. Do you have a permit to operate a public or semi-public swimming facility at this address? No permit is required. This is a private HOA function. The fire marshal stepped forward. Do you have an approved occupancy plan, emergency access plan, or certified safety staff? We have responsible adults. That is not what I asked. Denise turned toward Nathan. This is his residence. He is responsible for safety. Nathan opened the signed agreement and read aloud one sentence. The association accepts sole responsibility for guest supervision, emergency planning, safety staffing, permits, insurance, and claims arising from the event. A low murmur moved through the crowd. Denise raised her microphone again, but the health inspector held up a hand. This event cannot proceed. No one may enter the pool area. The words seemed to remove the air from Denise's body. You cannot shut down a private community celebration, she said. I can prevent operation of an unpermitted aquatic facility. "We are not operating a facility." The inspector looked at the enormous banner behind her. "Then why does that say community pool?" No one laughed, but several people looked away to hide smiles. A fourth car arrived. A representative from the association's insurance carrier stepped out holding a leather portfolio. He approached Howard first, introduced himself, and then asked Denise whether she had received the carrier's written notice that the proposed event was not covered. "That notice was based on incomplete information," she said. "We requested clarification. You did not provide it. We were busy organizing." "Mrs. Whitmore, the association has no coverage for this activity. You were instructed not to proceed until the matter was reviewed." Howard turned toward Denise. "You told us the insurer approved a one-day extension." "I said approval was expected. You said it was confirmed. That is not the issue right now, but it was the issue." One sentence after another began falling apart. Linda stepped closer. "You told me the county had the permit." Pamela said, "You told me Nathan signed over weekend access." Rachel Monroe, standing with her two boys, spoke from the crowd. "You told us he volunteered." An older resident raised his printed ticket. "You said the fee was for repairs to the community pool." Another woman said, "The payment page said summer programming." Questions rose from every side. Denise gripped the microphone with both hands. "Everyone needs to calm down. Mr. Cole has created confusion by contacting agencies that do not understand our internal rules." Nathan looked at the crowd. "There is one more rule everyone should understand." He held up a certified copy of the covenants. "There is no emergency recreation relief provision. There is no permanent easement. There is no authority allowing the HOA president to enter a private yard, control a private pool, or sell access to someone's home." Denise pointed at him. "That is his interpretation." Howard stepped beside Nathan. "No, it is the board's attorney's interpretation too." He held up a printed email. "The attorney says the provision was never approved and should not have been used." Denise's face went still. Nathan removed the document bearing Gerald Ames's signature. "This paper claims it was approved by Gerald Ames 11 days ago." People in the crowd exchanged confused looks. Eleanor stepped forward. "Gerald died 8 months ago," she said. Silence spread across Willowcrest Lane. Even the children seemed to sense the weight of it. Denise lowered the microphone. "That signature was carried over from a prior authorization." Howard stared at her. "There was no prior authorization. It was an administrative template." "With a dead man's signature?" Linda asked. Denise looked from one board member to another and realized none of them would protect her. Then Eleanor placed the cardboard file box on the ticket table. "And the community pool did not close because of an unexpected failure," she said. "It closed because the money approved for repairs was redirected." Pamela's face turned white. "Eleanor, what are you doing? What I should have done years ago." She removed copies of the bank statements and invoices. Nathan had prepared a one-page summary for each household. Sophie and Linda began handing them through the crowd. The summary showed the special assessment collected for pool repairs, the transfer into community enhancement, and the payments for office furniture, catered dinners, landscaping tied to Denise's brother, and work billed to common property but performed at the Whitmore residence. Residents read in stunned silence. Mark remained beside his mailbox across the street. He looked at the page someone handed him, then looked at his wife. Denise found her voice. "These documents are incomplete and taken out of context." Eleanor answered quietly. "Then we should have an independent audit." "No audit is necessary," Howard said. "I think it is." "So do I," Linda added. Richard nodded. Denise looked toward Pamela. "Tell them." Pamela stared at the cash box. "I signed what Denise gave me. She said the board had already approved it." "You knew the account," Denise said. "You told me Blue Heron Events was temporary. It is temporary. Then why are you the only signer?" That question came from the management company representative, who had arrived unnoticed near the back of the crowd. He held several printed account records. "Blue Heron Events is registered to Denise Whitmore personally," he said. "It is not an association account. Ticket receipts should not have been directed there." The crowd erupted into overlapping voices. Denise tried to raise the microphone, but the speakers had been unplugged by one of the city officials. Her words no longer carried farther than the people immediately around her. For 8 years, amplification had been her greatest weapon. Letterhead, message boards, official seals, microphones, meetings where she controlled the agenda. Now she stood in the center of the street without any of them. Just another person required to answer a question. Nathan did not insult her. He did not celebrate. He simply stood beside Sophie and watched the truth become too large for Denise to manage. The health inspector posted a closure notice on the temporary banner, not on Nathan's home. The fire marshal ordered the event canceled. The vendors packed their equipment. Parents gathered their children. The ticket table became a refund table after Howard and Linda insisted that every payment be returned. Denise refused to help. She walked toward her SUV, but Eleanor called after her. You told me I was confused because I was old. Denise stopped. Eleanor's voice was steady. I was not confused. I was afraid. There is a difference. Denise did not turn around. Eleanor continued, and I am not afraid of you anymore. A few residents began to applaud, not loudly, not cruelly, but with the warmth of people recognizing courage they had nearly forgotten. Denise got into her SUV and drove away, leaving the gold scissors on the pavement. The special board meeting was held that same evening in the clubhouse. Denise did not attend. The room was fuller than Nathan had ever seen it. Residents stood along the walls and filled the doorway. Howard called the meeting to order, then read aloud the provision allowing homeowners to remove a board officer by a 2/3 vote. Ballots were distributed, collected, and counted in front of everyone. 73 households voted to remove Denise Whitmore as president. 6 voted against. 5 did not participate. Pamela resigned as treasurer before a second vote could be held. Howard was appointed interim president, but he accepted only on the condition that a new election take place within 30 days. Eleanor agreed to serve on a temporary financial review committee. The board authorized an independent audit, froze all discretionary spending, and instructed the management company to preserve every email, invoice, bank record, and access log connected to Denise's tenure. The unsupported fines against Nathan were formally erased, so were dozens of similar fines issued to other residents. The so-called living standards, visual harmony notices, and presidential clarifications were suspended pending legal review. Most importantly, the board adopted a simple temporary rule. No HOA representative could enter a private lot without the owner's consent, documented emergency conditions, or lawful authority. It was the kind of rule everyone assumed already existed. Over the next several weeks, the audit confirmed much of what Eleanor's records suggested. Not every questionable payment was intentional, and not every mistake belonged to Denise alone, but enough did. Funds designated for pool repairs had been redirected without proper approval. Blue Heron Events had collected ticket money outside the association's accounting system. Vendor contracts involving Denise's brother had not been disclosed. The false emergency provision had no legal standing. The association's attorney negotiated a repayment agreement. Denise was required to return improperly used funds, reimburse professional fees, and surrender every association key, password, file, and device in her possession. The matter remained a civil one, handled through records, agreements, and financial accountability rather than spectacle. For Nathan, that was enough. He had never wanted to destroy Denise. He wanted her power to stop where his gate began. The community pool reopened before the end of summer. Once the accounts were corrected and the proper contractor was hired, the filtration system was repaired in less than 3 weeks. The bright blue water returned behind the clubhouse, and children filled it with the ordinary sounds Denise had once tried to regulate out of existence. There were no approved towel colors. No one measured the angle of the chairs. No committee inspected foam noodles. A new board election brought in people who had previously avoided association business. Rachel Monroe joined the recreation committee. Linda became secretary. Eleanor, after insisting she wanted no title, was elected treasurer by the largest margin of anyone on the ballot. Nathan declined a board position. I have enough paperwork, he told Howard. Instead, he helped write a homeowner bill of rights in clear language. Every fine had to cite a recorded rule. Every hearing had to include an actual vote. Every board decision had to appear in minutes. No officer could create policy alone. Residents gained access to financial reports without having to ask Denise or anyone like her for permission. As for the pool behind Nathan's house, it remained private. But privacy, Nathan believed, did not mean isolation. On the final Saturday of August, he and Sophie invited a small group of neighbors over for a backyard cookout. The invitation was personal, not official. No tickets were sold, no ribbon was cut, no one gave a speech about unity. Eleanor arrived carrying lemon cake. Rachel brought her 2 boys. Howard brought folding chairs even though Nathan already had enough. Linda came with a bowl of fruit. Mark Whitmore appeared last, standing uncertainly at the gate with a bag of ice. Nathan opened it. I wasn't sure I should come, Mark said. You were invited. Mark looked toward the street. Denise moved in with her sister for a while. Nathan nodded but did not ask for details. She says everyone betrayed her, Mark continued. People asked her to explain what she did. I know. Mark looked down at the bag in his hands. She has always believed those were the same thing. Nathan stepped aside and let him in. Sophie was already in the pool. She floated on her back beneath a clear blue sky, sunlight moving across the water. The red foam noodle rested beside her, bright and unapologetic. For a while, Nathan stood near the patio and watched his daughter laugh with Rachel's children. The sound carried across the yard, over the hedge, and into the quiet street. No one measured it, no one fined it, no one called it a disturbance. Eleanor sat beneath a red umbrella, the exact color Denise's imaginary standards would have forbidden. She raised a slice of cake toward Nathan. You realize this umbrella may be visually disruptive, she said. Nathan looked up at the bold red fabric glowing against the blue sky. I was counting on it. Sophie climbed out of the pool and joined him at the edge of the patio. Do you think she learned anything? She asked. Nathan knew who she meant. He considered the question before answering. I don't know. That's not very satisfying. The truth is not always satisfying. Sophie looked back at the water. Then what was the point? Nathan followed her gaze. The point was not to teach Denise. People only learn when they decide to. The point was to stop her from teaching everyone else that fear was normal. Sophie was quiet. He continued. For years, she made people believe being a good neighbor meant surrendering whenever she demanded something. But community is not ownership. It is not a title, a microphone, or a rule someone invented that morning. Community is people choosing to help one another while still respecting the line between what is shared and what belongs to someone else. Sophie smiled faintly. That sounds like something Mom would say. She would have said it better. She would have used more sticky notes. Definitely. They stood together as the late afternoon light turned the pool silver at the edges. A week later, Nathan hung a small wooden sign on the inside of the backyard gate. It could not be seen from the street. It was meant for the people invited through. Kindness is welcome here. Entitlement is not. He chose those words because the lesson of Blue Heron Estates had never truly been about a pool. The pool was only the place where one woman's hunger for control became impossible to ignore. The real story was about boundaries. It was about how unreasonable power often arrives dressed as procedure. It carries a clipboard, it uses official language, it speaks as though questions are acts of disloyalty. It tells decent people that peace requires silence, but peace built on fear is not peace. Rules without authority are not law, and leadership without accountability is only control wearing a respectable name. Nathan had given Denise Whitmore a lesson she would remember for the rest of her life, but he had done it without shouting louder than she did, without humiliating innocent people, and without becoming the kind of person he opposed. He kept records. He asked clear questions. He protected his daughter. He allowed Denise to put every false claim in writing, then made her stand beside those claims when the truth arrived. In the end, she lost not because Nathan was more aggressive, but because he was more patient. And long after the signs, fines, ribbons, and official vehicles were gone, the people of Blue Heron remembered what happened at the house on Willow Crest Lane. They remembered the morning their president tried to claim a private pool as community property. They remembered the man who refused to surrender it. Most of all, they remembered that the strongest boundary in the world is not a wall, a gate, or a lock. It is a calm person who knows the truth, knows his rights, and is no longer afraid to say no.